friends, and welcome to our Meet the Animals video. My name is Lauren. I am one of the education specialists with FL Schlagle Library, and today I'm going to introduce you to the newest member of our crew. Here, this is Charlie. He is a ball python, and while most of the animals that we have are native here to Kansas, ball pythons are going to be found in western and central Africa in the grasslands and open forests there. So not going to find ball pythons in the wild around here. But we have Charlie because he came from a nature center and was the result of an accidental surprise mating between a couple ball pythons they had. They didn't know that they were male and female, which is really easy to happen because snakes have their reproductive organs on the inside of their bodies. So we know Charlie's a boy because he had an internal exam by a reptile vet. But for most of our reptiles here, our snakes and turtles, we know if they're male or female based on whether or not they've ever laid eggs. Now, there are reptiles are just on their own by themselves in their enclosures, so there's not going to be any young inside those eggs. They are infertile, but it's the same idea as when you crack open a chicken egg and it's the yolk falls out, not a baby bird. Okay, so another cool thing about ball pythons is that when they lay their clutch of eggs, usually about 6, the female will stay and wrap around them and quiver and actually incubate those eggs, unlike a lot of reptiles will lay their eggs and then move on. Ball pythons are also nocturnal, so they're active at night, spending their day sleeping in a burrow. So we have, for Charlie, a little fake rock with a hole in it that he spends most of his time. And ball pythons are terrestrial, which means that they are usually slithering along the ground. So we have some fake grassy turf for him to crawl on to mimic the grass. And then we also, sometimes they'll go up into trees. And so we also have some PVC piping for him to be able to climb on and explore. So all kinds of ways for him to enjoy his habitat while we're trying to mimic his natural environment. So in the wild, ball pythons are going to eat a wide variety of animals. They might eat amphibians, small birds, small mammals, and sometimes even other snakes. Now, luckily, we don't have to feed Charlie snakes here. Captive ball pythons will be eating mice and rats. And so Charlie, about once a week, gets a pinky mouse about this big. But as he grows, of course, his food will get bigger until eventually he'll be eating small rats. Ball pythons are some of the more manageable pythons. They reach a maximum of only about 4.5 to 5 feet. So a little bit easier to handle as opposed to, say, a Burmese python that can be over 20 feet long. That's one of the reasons why these guys are popular among captive breeders. Another really cool thing is that ball pythons actually have about 6,500 different color varieties. So Charlie's the natural wild coloring, but there's all kinds of different types of ball pythons. So if you see here, the natural coloring employs what we call counter shading. So if you look at the belly, it's very light versus dark on the back. So what that does is it helps them blend in with their natural environment of being both on the ground and up in the trees. So if you were looking down on Charlie from above, you would see this, and that would help him blend in with the dirt and the leafy debris along the ground. Whereas if he were to go up into a tree, you would be looking at his light tummy here, and that would help him blend in with the sky. So a good method to avoid being seen by both predators and prey. The last really cool feature I'll share with you about pythons, and this is also shared with boas and vipers, is that they have heat-sensing pits along the mouth here. So if you look, there are tons of little holes just above his mouth, and those actually will let him see the heat that all living creatures emit. So if he were pursuing his prey, and it were next to a rock of the same size, he would be able to tell it apart based on the heat that the living animal releases. So to wrap up our video, if you are considering getting a scaly friend, I implore you to please, before you just go out and buy one, do your research. For one, make sure it's coming from someone who has been a responsible breeder that's taking good care of the animals, but also whether it's a turtle, a snake, or a lizard, you need to know what the animal needs in order to live a happy, long, healthy life. What type of lighting, what type of bedding material, the water it needs, the type of food it eats, all those things, the size of its enclosure, and these things can change over time as the animal ages. And also, reptiles generally live a lot longer than like cats and dogs. For example, ball pythons can easily live well into their late 30s. So that's a very long-term commitment. So if that's something that you're a little bit hesitant about, it will probably be better for you to just enjoy the wild reptiles that call our parks and our backyards home. So you can always go out, look for turtles along the shoreline, or if you're careful, you can move a rock and see a snake under there sometimes. But remember, wild animals are more afraid of us than we are of them. So just be really careful and give them their space. Never put your hand up like in a dark place where you can't see. Please don't go hiking in flip-flops. You know, usually when people get bit by a snake, it's just an accident where they've reached somewhere or stepped on the snake, and the snake is just getting scared and protecting itself. So go out, explore, look for these animals, but please don't try to pick up a wild snake or any kind of wild animal. Take the pictures, tell the stories, enjoy them, and leave the wild animals wild. And once an animal is your pet and in captivity, please keep it there. Don't release it because it probably won't survive, and it could also expose the wild animals to parasites and disease, which I'm sure none of us would want to do. Alright, so with that said, I would like to say goodbye and thank you for joining us today. And Charlie says goodbye. Wave, Charlie! No, he's not going to wave. Bye!